Welcome back to Passing Time with Craig. As always, I'm your host, Craig, and this week we are chatting CUFF.Docs, the Calgary Underground Film Festival's documentary film fest, running November 19th to 23rd at Globe Cinema. We've been chatting with filmmakers and programmers all week long. Today, we're chatting with the director and subject and co-producer of Modern Horror, having an Alberta premiere November 19th at the Globe. Director Nicole Bazuin and subject Andrea Werhun were fantastic to chat with them. They're such lovely people, and this documentary is so good. It is Andrea's story about being a sex worker, stories, conversations with her friends and family and fellow sex workers. It's such an important documentary now more than ever. So we're going to chat about making this film, Nicole and Andrea's relationships as co-workers and entertainers. And then, of course, we're going to chat all about this documentary, which is a little bit different documentary style than others, which I absolutely loved. We're going to talk about Andrea, sharing her story with the world, having conversations with friends, family, and fellow sex workers in it, the importance of destigmatizing legalization of sex workers. It's a little bit of a daunting conversation to have, but it's so much fun, so important. We're going to cover everything. So please enjoy this episode of Modern Horror with director Nicole and subject Andrea. Got to see a screener of it, and I adored it. It's such a great film, such an important topic that needs to be covered more, and the choices of the documentary we're going to get to. But Andrea, I want to start with you. When did you, this is based on your memoir. When did you decide that you were ready to put this story, your story, out into the world?
Geez. Well, it probably, I mean, I've always wanted to be a writer.
Yeah.
And when I was escorting in my early 20s as a university student who was studying English literature, I became aware of the fact that I was living out these stories that, under any other circumstance, I would want to be able to write about. But because of the impact of stigma,
Yeah.
I knew at the time it wasn't possible for me to just write a story about my sex work experience under my real name, and call it a day. That it was not possible for me without great reflection and consideration about my future and what it would mean for me to actually come out as a sex worker. And so I had written some stories, I had written a lot of poetry, I had done a lot of documentation about my sex work experience in those early years, but I put them away. And a few years later, after I'd quit sex work and was working on a farm, Nicole came to visit, and I'm regaling her with all these stories, and she's saying, we have to make something together. We have to make something with this. And so I feel like that was the moment where I thought, okay, it might actually be possible for me to tell these stories. But even then, even in that initial form, I still wasn't completely sold on the idea of coming out fully and writing under my real name and owning these stories. And it wasn't until an interaction I had actually with an OCAD professor at the Toronto Art Book Fair, where Nicole and I were selling this $5 promotional centerfold to get to raise funds to start making the book. And I wasn't fully out yet.
Yeah.
I was thinking I could be kind of coy about whether or not I could tell the story under my real name. And so this woman started to kind of push against that. She was questioning me. She was like, okay, so you're trying to tell a sex worker story, but you're not actually a sex worker. And I realized in that moment I had to claim my identity as a sex worker if I really wanted to tell my story. And because I'm an artist and I'm a writer and I'm dedicated to telling the truth through my art, and I have, a wide set of privileges that make it possible for me to use my voice and tell this story, I decided then and there that that was the moment that I was going to come out as a sex worker fully and claim this story as my own.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just so much more powerful. I mean, there's so many great stories written by people that somewhat captures different, whatever the aspect, whether it's a sex worker, whether it's somebody who is bullied, whatever it may be. But it's so much more authentic when it's the person telling the story is actually can can back up the facts and the details, because there are those moments where you're like, well, that doesn't happen. That's just, and you're like, it does.
Yeah, and I don't have to pretend that it, whether or not it happened or not. Like, and even in the early days when I, started reading some of the stories out loud at various events, like, I was coy about it. I was like, maybe this happened. Maybe it didn't. I don't know. Is it true? Could be, maybe not. But at the end of the day, being able to own my own experiences and come out, I, it's still certainly not without its risks,
Yeah.
but it's the future and it's the world that we want to see. So we've created art, over the last decade that makes it safe for me to be able to do that. But we need to see cultural change so that everyone has the same opportunity.
Oh, definitely. And one of the aspects I loved about the documentary was, um, it's your story, it's you, but you brought in your friends, and we got to have these moments, the roundtable discussions, and speaking with people who, different appearances, different ethnicities. Like, I really enjoyed that. And I thought that was so nice, because we could have just focused on this narrative and could have been like, well, what about the other people involved? And so I really appreciate that you brought them in. Did you know that you wanted to bring in your friends for this documentary?
I think it was very important to us after the experience of doing the book and doing the short films that we wanted to expand the modern horror cinematic universe
Yeah.
to include other sex worker perspectives, because my story is not universal. It's we are not a monolith. We all come to this work from a variety of backgrounds and experiences, and it would be disingenuous to suggest that modern horror is a universal story. It absolutely isn't. And so that's why it was really important to include the voices of my friends who have that lived experience. Um, and also that we may have different experiences, we may have different opinions about the work, but what we have in common is that we believe that all sex workers should be treated with respect and dignity and have access to basic human rights.
100%. Nicole, you're working alongside your friend. You're helping her raise funds for the book. You make the short documentary, the short of modern horror. You made other shorts before. Why was this the one that you were like, this is going to be my first full length? What was it?
Oh, for first full length feature film.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for a long time in our collaboration, Andrea and I have had many ambitions, but I definitely think one of them was a feature length film. And it always felt like we were building towards like a more fulsome telling of this story. I think it always felt like, I enjoy making the shorts, but it's always going to be one facet or like a few facets of this very multifaceted tale. Um, so, and to me, frankly, doing the shorts was always like a bit of a way for me to wrap my head around what a feature might look like. It doesn't mean I don't think those shorts are worthy onto themselves, but I think, like I said, we needed a longer format. And within that format, not only could we tell more stories, but like you said, involve, other people in those stories. We could kind of expand beyond just Andrea, but also have her loved ones, her friends and family in the film as well. So I think it was just so exciting for us to be able to finally do this cinematic magnum opus, and to also feel like it was something we were able to build towards, and have it hopefully benefit from the fact that this project is years in the making. So as much as we're having fun doing it, it's also like very thoughtfully made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when did you know that, like, because I love I think we all had this idea of what documentaries were, and those were basically what we were shown in school growing up, and you're just like, oh, this is really boring. And then we've seen a shift in things. What I loved about this was that there's people who could have watched this and just thought this was all completely like scripted story, and it was just a unique way of doing a film. But that's what I love, that there was like so much comedy. There's animation. There's real serious conversations that you have with your mom, with your partner, friends. When did you know that you wanted to not fit into one box? Is it because it's like a movie about sex work, that you're like, it can't just fit into one box in filmmaking?
I think that this is a subject matter, this is a person, and these are artists who will not fit into a box. So it's kind of coming from all aspects here, that this needed to be an unconventional mode to tell this story in order to be told our way. So I think, this has always started from Andrea and myself being multi-hyphenate artists
Yeah.
who possess, different skills. And I think it means that, even if Andrea's acting, she's actually approaching that art form as also being a writer. And, myself as a film director, I'm also approaching that as also being a visual artist. And that's just part of our identity, our perspective, the way that we make things. So I think that, and we both are just people with so many interests and ambitions, and we kind of gas each other up, and we want to do different things. So it's like, oh, we could do a book, and it would be so cool if it was like had a centerfold or whatever it is. We get excited about what we could make. And so, oh, but why stop there? Let's do movies, So it kind of came from this spirit of us being interested in making different things. And we just ran with that. I think it's really restrictive and boring to be confined by these classic notions of like what a book should look like, what a documentary should look like, or what a film should look like in general. Because why be confined by that when there's so many other options available to kind of tell a story the way that that it wants to be told? Because I think for me as well, in thinking about the feature, it would feel like lacking to not have one of the two aspects. Like, I think it's really important that Andrea can be herself in interview, and that we can see her real life interactions with the relationship she has, her mom, her boyfriend, her friends. But then also see her express herself as an artist and a performer, and so that we can enter her world through the reenactments or the story world that happens in this feature film. So yeah, I think it was really about just being able to choose the mode that felt right for this story. And we're really excited by what we've made.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's so good. And so, Andrea, for you, was there when you guys are working together on this and you're figuring things out, was there something that was more daunting to you? The idea of the one-on-one confessional camera, the one-on-one conversations with your partner, your mom, or your friends, or the reenactment, like literally reliving some of these moments?
All of the above. All of the above. I mean, I would say that, um, daunting. I didn't find talking to the camera terribly daunting. Telling my story very straight up to the camera, that wasn't a challenge for me. That came quite naturally. Um, Interviewing my friends and my family, also not daunting because of how much preparation we put into those interviews. And the lengths that we went to make sure that every single person who was expressing their opinions in this film felt prepared themselves to be able to share their opinions and their experiences. And so that wasn't super daunting either because of that level of preparation. The reenactments, I would say, probably were the most daunting, specifically the reenactments of my own trauma.
Yeah.
That's a unique situation for anyone in a documentary. Perhaps maybe it's never happened before.
Yeah.
Um, reenacting my own trauma was a particularly challenging experience, but made so much less daunting by the fact that we were prepared. Um, we had an intimacy coordinator on set for any single scene that involved any type of touching of anybody else, but also for those scenes that involved traumatic reenactments. But most importantly, we had a sex worker, trauma-informed counselor on set for those scenes specifically, who was available for me, but also to anybody on set that was feeling a little bit triggered by what was happening and what we were bringing to the screen. And so, yeah, that element was a challenge, but I do think that we handled it really, really well. And I feel so proud of what we've been able to accomplish and bring to the screen there. And, you know, it's complicated for sex workers to talk about traumatic events that happen while we are working, because so often those experiences get weaponized against us as a justification to further criminalize our profession. And so it makes us a little bit afraid to be honest in public about, you know, the pros and the cons, and the dangers that we do face in a criminalized industry, which are inevitable because of those policy choices. But I do really feel like we did our homework, and I felt prepared, and Nicole was, you know, exceptionally sensitive, and I think gave it such a nuanced and respectful treatment that comes across on screen.
Yeah, it was different than other scenes in movies and documentaries as you're telling what happened to you. A lot of times in the documentaries, that would be where like it would just go to black and then some words would come on the screen and it would just kind of move along. And it would literally just jump to the let's go to something funny. Um, Nicole, finding all those beats in the documentary, did they come naturally as you were filming them and then editing them? Did you know when we were gonna what? Because there's moments in the documentary, especially early on, Andrea, where you say, "We'll talk about that later." Like, were those puzzle pieces coming together right away?
That's a really good question, because this is, you know, as much as it a film that has narrative aspects, at the end of the day, it's still a documentary, and it's categorized predominantly as a documentary. And it's got, you know, people, though they are, you know, informed of the topics we're going to talk about, they're still speaking candidly. It's unscripted. And so you never really know exactly what a film like this is until you've shot it and start to put it together. And so, you know, this is a film that had a script going in terms of, you know, what the idea of a chronology for this film would be. But absolutely in the editing process, there was some shifting based on what was said, based on actually experiencing the material, based on showing it to test audiences and thinking about what felt clear or maybe what didn't feel so clear. And I think what was really great about that was an opportunity to, you know, just like any film, write it, you know, in preparation, rewrite it again in the shooting, and then rewrite it a third time in the editing process. And so I would say a lot of that form you were talking about was already anticipated and built in, but then some of it absolutely were things that I was working out as the editor of the film as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Because you're not wearing enough hats. You need more things to do.
you know, we're not each juggling enough different roles. on this film. I was also the editor. So yeah, it was an opportunity to get really up close and personal with footage and yeah, rewrite it that third time to try to strengthen the storytelling as much as possible. Um so I think that was what was fun about it too, ultimately, is to be like, in many ways, I think the film surpassed even like what I would, because that's actually the joy of also just bringing it into existence and then being able to work with what you've created and see the film tell you what it actually needs to be as it comes to existence. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of how you have to be as a documentarian. I've the ones that don't work out, the ones that you're like, this was crappy, is because they're like, no, we were only going to tell this story. And I've seen them where you're like, oh, but if you went over this way, this would be really good. And you're like, no, we're not going to touch on that. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So there is a question or a statement that gets said kind of early on and it brings back at the end. And it really stuck with me because it's true. It's that most stories of sex workers, they're either the villain or the victim. Um, Andrea, do you find, has that changed since you first kind of thought of that? I mean, so the Oscars, we had Honora, um, a film about a sex worker, won a bunch of awards, and it was like, oh, maybe this is going to open up the dialogue of sex workers and like, destigmatizing it. And I mean, that happened in March and we've not talking about it anymore. Where do you find the villain victim in media still stands?
Oh, um, yeah, I think that we're definitely still very much trapped in the dichotomy of the victim and the villain when it comes to sex work. And the only way to truly combat it is by sex workers coming out and telling our own stories. However, that does come with tremendous risk, including an increased risk of victimization. And so we still don't have enough of our stories out there, stories that are told by us and for us. Um, I I see a world that's, I unfortunately becoming potentially more dangerous for sex workers in a lot of ways, um, unless we can change the narrative, from victim or villain to, fully fleshed out human being who is at our heart, like, we're workers.
Yeah.
We do this work for money. This is a job. We are workers who deserve, labor rights. And the only thing that's going to change that is policy changes in conjunction with, I think, artistic works that move the needle culturally in the way that we perceive sex workers. And that those nuanced portrayals, I think, come from sex workers having decision-making rules on, film sets. With Honora, I was a consultant, so I paid to give my opinion.
Yeah.
But I did not have a say in what ended up on screen, for instance. And so, like, what is on screen in Honora, I think for a civilian audience feels very real and authentic. But there are sex workers that do take issue with some of the stuff that's in that film, and it's not unusual for actresses to win Oscars for playing sex workers.
I mean, as a gay man who also wins Oscars, straight guys winning it for playing gay males, like, and you're like, great, congrats on winning this award for telling a story that you can't relate to.
100%. There is a limit to the benefits of representation when it's not in conjunction with material changes that actually make our lives safer. And so, yeah, there's a lot that needs to change there. And I do think that sex workers, when we our autonomy, when it is expressed, is often villainized. That's unfortunately for a lot of marginalized identities, that is the fact of the matter, is that it doesn't matter what we do, somehow we're still doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I do sincerely believe that, community is really important, storytelling, creating spaces where we're safe to be ourselves and tell stories to each other, for each other, like first and foremost is really important. And then, bringing those stories to a mainstream audience, because I think people are so hungry for the authentic
Yeah.
and the genuine. And they've been fed a narrative that's not made by us. And it boggles my mind how our perception of sex work is almost entirely made up of representations in TV and films.
Mm-hmm.
Because we think we don't know sex workers in our lives. We probably do. They don't feel safe enough to come out to us. And so our only, understanding of sex work is from TV and film. And those depictions tend to be victims or villains. And so that needs to change. I think it's changing. I think modern horror is a part of that movement to see the needle move. But there's lots of incredible sex worker artists and filmmakers who are pushing it right there with us. And I think together we can actually make some real cultural change.
Yeah. I mean, I was in grade 10 and we had to do a debate and everybody got to choose their own thing. And I chose to do legalizing prostitution because I was like, and I was just like, this makes sense. And my principal happened to come into the class that day and I was like, I'm giving the speech. And I brought up a lot of valid points about, and you mention it, you all mention it in the documentary. There'd be more accountability, safety. When you first became an escort and you're talking with Trina and Craig, which was like, oh, great. You're like, how often should I get tested for STIs? Like, would be safer for so many people for so many reasons. Knowing where people will be, all that stuff. Like, I just don't get it.
Yeah, like why pretend it's not happening? And who does that benefit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think about everything that's going on in the States, and Alberta's been making some really backwards decisions as well. And the big thing, one of the things that I keep, talking about, hearing in the States, especially with the Roe v. Wade reversal, those Republican old guys who voted for no abortions are still getting their person, whoever that may be, a mistress, a relative, whoever, they're still getting them the abortion. So that's the whole thing. That's the frustrating thing, is that the people who are saying no, sex work is not work and should not be legalized, are very frequent clients, I'd assume.
I would assume as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's always a question of, like the hypocritical behavior of people in power benefiting from our silence, because they have something to lose when we're empowered and we can actually speak for ourselves.
Yes.
Yep,
100%. Nicole, how excited are you to be a part of this, be the director of this, and now releasing it into the world?
I'm extremely excited. I think, this is a film that I'm not only excited about just as being an engaging story and with a charismatic lead at the center of it. And so I'm proud of it, just as an artwork, but the fact that all these aspects we've been talking about social change, about policy change, the rights and respect and humanity of sex workers, that being at the heart of this project just makes it all the more meaningful. It makes it a project that I'm extra excited to be taking outside of our bubble in Toronto and just like tour around and start conversations and meet people like yourself. And it's really exciting for us. And we're just excited to be on this journey and see where it goes.
Do we get nervous, either of you, as you're about to present a work, like not just the subject matter, that's not, but literally just releasing something, your baby, your preciousness, releasing this and being in a theater full of people watching it?
I would say extremely nervous. In particular, the world premiere at TIFF, I was very nervous
I
about.
imagine
I
so.
have to be honest. Just because it felt like an almost comical amount of tension and buildup to that great reveal.
Yeah.
And it's something we've been working on for years. And as I mentioned, I was also editing it. So I was working on it, in my cave for months leading up to it. And it's almost like you're so delirious. You're like, am I just dreaming all this? Does this movie actually exist? There's going to be people watching it. I'm so confused. I think, but that was an amazing platform
Yeah.
to release it at TIFF and in our home city and, have our friends and family there to embrace it. Plus a lot of, new eyes on the project. It was incredible. But I think that was like an important psychological leap for me to get through was just that premiere.
Yeah.
And I think from there it's been like incredible. It just felt like now it's the best part of the process, which is actually being able to connect with people over the film.
Yeah, that must be such a fun part for you, Andrea, to like now have the conversations.
It is fun. I will say I agree with Nicole that the world premiere at first viewing was really intense, and I think I was in a state of shock afterwards.
Did you like wake up afterwards? You're like, did it happen?
I was having my moment like during the Q&A. It's like, you really expect me to talk? I feel like I've been talking for the last 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, I have to say more? I feel like I've said everything I can possibly say in the movie. But then, subsequent screenings I've just, yeah, I love it. I love presenting this work to people. I know how strong it is. I know how like heartwarming and transformative it is. And so I feel nothing but pride. And then, yeah, the opportunity to do Q&As, especially in Calgary with CUFF, like it's going to be so much fun to be able to be in front of an audience and talk to people about how they feel about the film and answer their questions. And maybe I'll ask them a few questions and because it's really, it's in a way, the movie is a built world in which sex workers feel safe to tell their stories. And it's not the world that we actually exist in. And so we are trying to make that the world that we exist in. But there's this like level of interfacing with the public that needs to happen. And sometimes people have not processed their own stigma, their own unconscious horophobia that we're all born with, so sometimes doing my little like song and dance in the Q&As gets a little bit like hairy just because people don't realize what they're kind of throwing my way. But
Yeah.
it's still fun and it's still really interesting. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
And the audience that come to Film Fest are just there's so much different than your average moviegoer. They are invested and interested and they want to hear your story. So it's always so much fun. And Nicole, I was reading you actually you had in 2023 at CUFF your won Audience and Jury Award for Best Canadian Short. Well done.
Thank you. Apparently I'm hot in Calgary.
Yeah, apparently.
But this will be the first time actually traveling
Nice.
to Calgary, so I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was wild that and Andrea was involved in that film too, actually. She's in it.
Oh, nice.
And Coco Mai, who's in Modern Horror, one of the friends at the table.
Oh, yeah.
That's their story. So we co-wrote that film together. And it's one of those just magical experiences to have your film be embraced in a different place. And I think it's one of those things that kind of makes you feel as an artist like you're actually legitimized in some way. It's like folks who have never met before enjoying the film, voting for it for the jury award or the audience award. It just feels like so legitimizing and incredible. So, and I really love this notion of an underground film festival because as much as, we want our film to kind of straddle like different elements. Like we'd like it to be fairly mainstream in the sense that it could hopefully be accessible and people can and see it. And also, you know, have it if it's not accessible enough to a wide range of people, it can't do what we want, which is to be able to confront like it should be watched by folks who maybe don't think they're going to agree politically. And hopefully, that's part of having it be more of a broad audience that's invited in. But at the same time, we like this notion of it being an underground film, an underground cinema, and this notion of like what we do as subversive artists that's so important and unique and worthy of celebration.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I love about the Underground Film Festival is that you're seeing films that you maybe don't get a chance to, especially on a theater, like, otherwise you have to go digging through the interwebs and be like, what is out there? And so to see it on at a big screen, surrounded by people and going, oh, there's other people interested in this topic. And again, that's how we start the conversations, like here in Calgary, to have all these people watching modern horror and going, oh, wait, maybe there's more people in this city who want to talk about this that we don't realize.
Like it's not so underground after all.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's something really interesting about that. You're right. Because I think this film, we want it to touch like people who, like I said, maybe don't think they're gonna agree with it or what have you. But it's also been a project that's been about finding our people to an extent, finding the folks who are hungry for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you both too much longer because I know you're busy, and I'm just again, I just love this film so much. It was so great. But one thing I do want to touch on because I always love finding people in the entertainment industry who find their people who to collaborate with on multiple things. How lucky you both are. If you guys can both touch on how nice it is to have each other to really feed off of each other.
Well, I'll begin. You know, how much time do you have left? Talk for a while. There's a reason I call Nicole my wife, actually, in a lot of ways, because like it's a dream come true to have a collaborator like Nicole. I am so lucky to be the apple of Nicole's eye, to just do my little dance and Nicole goes, yay! And then like we make art. Like it's absolutely absurd. Nicole is ridiculously talented, super determined, gets the job done, manifests, in a way that is wild. We've been working on this for 10 years and so much of what we do together is just this process of being friends with each other who have a tremendous amount of respect for each other's craft and working together to get the job done. And, there's love there too. And there's just this mutual joy in each other's talents. And we also, Nicole has like this amazing sense of humor on top of being so creatively talented. And so she's so fun to be around. And yeah, like I couldn't dream of a better creative partner on this work.
Nicole, then follow that.
No wonder I like to work with Andrea, right? Like, no, but we really do gas each other up, and that's what runs the modern horror machine in the sense that we are just both such fans of one another. And we have such complementary skill sets. And so this is also a collaboration that really started with just the two of us and a bunch of different dreams and ambitions. And so it felt like it started from a context in which we had to only have like the belief in each other as what was going to be moving it forward. And then only having each other to like fill a bunch of different roles to make it happen. Like kind of going back to our like all the roles of juggling, the writing, the acting, the directing, the editing, the producing, whatever roles we had to take on to make this happen. And so it's always kind of had that vibe, and it had to be driven by mutual appreciation and friendship and love. And I feel like in that way, I thought about it too, in terms of it breaking this notion of like a documentary that has to be objective, because this is not an objective documentary. And I think that there's still a worth in that with what this is, which is a film that is very subjective to Andrea's point of view. And it's made with love by someone who loves her dearly. And I will not apologize for that. It's not objective. This is the film that is about it's about being lovingly made and with friendship at the heart of it and a shared sense of humor. And that gets us through even the challenging aspects of what's in this film so that it can ultimately be something that hopefully is infused with joy and love. And that might sound kind of corny, but I think that like it's something that I feel good about putting out into the world.
Yeah, and I loved it so much. I appreciate, as someone who also likes to bring humor when we're a heavy subject matter, I just thought it was also fantastic. I'm so excited for Calgary audiences to see modern horror because it was just so good. So I thank you both for sharing this story, sharing your story, and just amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Craig. We're so excited to
Yeah,
share the film at CUFF.
and hopefully it's decent weather for you.
Well, we'll be out, rain or
Yeah,
shine.
I was saying before you joined on that it is our first snowfall currently happening, but now it's stopped in the past half hour and it's not sticking to the cement. It's just on like trees and grass and cars. So hopefully we're good.
We'll be ready with the cutest snow bunny fashion.
Exactly.
We will be there.
Yeah. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Andrea, so much. I had such a pleasure talking with you both. Two such kind, fun, smart individuals. Uh, I feel like we could be friends. I might move to Toronto. But yeah, go check it out. The Alberta premiere of Modern Horror, November 19th, Wednesday at the Globe Cinema. Tickets are just $75 to go see every single film at the festival. Check it out. You can just go to the CalgaryUndergroundFilm.org for tickets, schedules, all that fun stuff. Make sure to follow me on social media at PTWCraig, Passing Time with Craig on Facebook and Instagram for all the fun ways to pass the time. Otherwise, we'll chat soon. Bye.